So we have a couple of questions that have come to our pod recently. And so we have two, and I was hoping that that would be a good point. Oh, and I dropped my notes. I was hoping that that would be a good point in terms of things that we can discuss next. Where are my questions? Okay, so the first question, if you have a question for the pod or for the panelists, we have a couple of upcoming topics. So we are going into the studio on Friday to film about murder shows. We've got Kids in Crisis Part 3 coming up. One all about the psychology of gaming. We're also going to look at bad love and the ways in which our quest for romance might be interfering with our ability to find joy in our day-to-day life. So some slightly less intense topics, but if you have a question for the pod, you can email me at kim@howtobehappyhour.com, and I will see if they make it to the pod. Our two questions are for today. The very first one is, what builds resiliency in kiddos? How can we create an environment where our kids are navigating, what are the statistics I have here for us today? Right now, our kids are under increased academic pressure, unlike ever before, with increased expectations and performance standards in schools that we've literally never seen before. Social interactions are becoming more and more challenging as kids deal with things like making friends, fitting in, and dealing with conflict, with a significant uptick in bullying within the last couple of years. Family dynamics, so difficulty within family systems such as parental divorce or separation, conflicts between parents, financial instability, technology and media issues, which we've kind of discussed pretty significantly. We're also seeing some of the largest disparity with income inequality than we ever have before. So the division between the haves and the have-nots in America are expanding in ways that we've not yet seen before. Emotional and mental health challenges, which is the whole premise of the pod. And then extracurricular activities, putting on significant amounts of pressure. I joked about my 7-year-old's baseball team being like a full-time job, but man, like it really is like a full-time job. And I know that that only increases in terms of expectations. And then last but not least, the world events. Last week here in the state of Pennsylvania, we weren't allowed to be outside or breathe our air. We have global pandemics. We have school shootings every other week. Natural disasters, political turmoil, all different things causing distress and anxiety. So how do we create resiliency? Because right now that's what our kids need.
So there was a great article published by Harvard that I read when I was in grad school on resiliency. And the one thing that it boiled down to was having one consistent person in their lives. Just one would have profound impact on resiliency and building their resiliency. And so like whether it's the sports coach, the youth leader, a teacher, a therapist, whoever that may be for that child, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, you know, so like if divorce happens, if the death of a parent happens, right, there's somebody they can go to outside of the immediate unit, the nuclear unit, has shown really good results.
I think similarly, in some of the ACEs studies, it shows that can really be a buffer. And like we look at in IBHS, community supports as part of that. So I guess the key being the child loves to do something, not you know, the parent or the caregivers love baseball or soccer or dance or whatever, but that the child enjoys it and it's not an added stressor. I think distress tolerance is another big piece for resiliency. If we can teach kids, you know, we call it natural environment teaching, just giving them those natural opportunities to deal with little bits of hurt sometimes that just happen in life can really go a long way down the road. And I know we're kind of moving on from the tech topic, but I did want to give a plug. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Wait Until 8th and that pledge. I don't know who exactly, it's like a private group, I guess, that sponsor that, but the premise is at least to delay giving your child a smartphone until they're in 8th grade because of all the research and statistics that are out there, particularly with social media. So they're not against, like, if you need a phone for, communication or safety reasons, phones, texting or calling maybe, but to delay a smartphone specifically till they're in 8th grade. There's a pledge you can sign online. There's different stats and talking points on their website, and you can share it with different groups. You can choose schools if they chose, to promote it and be a part. But yeah, we signed that pledge for our family.
It's really cool.
I think as far as resiliency goes, one of the best things that we can do for kids in general is just like let them fail at all the little things while they're little, because it just gets bigger as they get older. And so if we can support them and hold them accountable and help them through messing up when they're little, then they'll have those skills and coping mechanisms when they get older to function when they maybe mess up in a bigger way. So that's just what I try to do with my own kids and with my students.
I think there's something to be said for modeling it as well. It's funny, like I'll have parents come in and say, well, my kid's addicted to their smartphone. It's like, well, how often do you look at your smartphone? And like, fuck you and shame on you. Don't you even ask me that question. Like, it's funny how we shift when that becomes a part of the conversation.
Yeah, like talking about technology, like my kids finished school a week and a half ago. I finished school on Friday. And today we are no screens for at least a week, and it's me too, right? Like, because I'm just as guilty as they are sometimes. But I mean, even just in the couple hours this morning, like the kids had like blocks and they were playing with them, and we're calling it the summer of the fort because there's a big fort in the playroom, and hopefully we can kind of break that sort of pattern after we've been able to step back and reevaluate. But we have to do it too.
So if we see you on Facebook later, we should call you on it?
Huh?
So if we see you on Facebook later, we should call you on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it. Yeah. No, Elena will do that for me.
Luckily,
You're
you
on
have
your
a
phone.
preteen
We're not
girl.
supposed to be.
But that's the challenge. And I think like phone and technology consumption, I think the way we eat, the way we nourish our bodies, the way we deal with stress, the way we, like all these little micro messages that we're sending our kids all the time. And I think to be all right with our own failures, there's value in that. I think that like the story about your husband apologizing, I think there's value in that. There's power there. And I think those little ways, like kids can learn resiliency through observing resiliency. And I've worked with, like, my kids have watched me lose a sibling. My parents have watched my husband lose a parent. And I think we both debated back and forth on, like, what's the right way to grieve in the context of your children. And even now, like, there are times where my kids have seen me take on a different relationship with my brother, like 3 years post-mortem. And talk about, like, I'm still sad sometimes about it, though. And they're like, oh, okay, like, that
So,
makes sense. And
That's
this,
really
that.
funny. Like, I lost my mom, I think, about the same time you lost your brother. Pretty close.
Right around there. September 2020. I don't know where you were.
Yeah, mine
We're
was
right there.
like December 19, but
Yeah.
either way, close. Last night we were watching a show. I think it was like Alone. I don't know if you guys will watch Alone. It's fun. It's like a survivalist show. But one of the people was talking about like how his dad had died, and he got like a little emotional about it, and Matt made like my husband made a goofy comment about like, well, his dad died like 9 years ago, and I was like, when was the last time you lost a parent? Because his parents and grandparents are still living, and I was like, you don't know when it's gonna come up, like it just happens, right? Like like something will hit you, and you take it like it's just a reminder, or like there's no right or wrong way to grieve or have those remembering like things that spark your memory. It happens, and you get emotional.
And I think to show that to our kids, that like to
Right,
display that
yeah.
like, yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
come up, or you're going to, I mean, I love when my kids, to share with my kids when I make a mistake or do something like epically stupid at work, or, I make mistakes all the time. And watching, like, I can think of a time, it was last fall, but I was leaving the house, I was rushing, and I hit our house with my car. Like, yeah, and it was just one of those mornings, like, I'm driving out too fast, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hit the house, and like, I'm like crying and hyperventilating. It was just like one of those days, right, where like you couldn't win for losing. I was late for something. I hit the house with my car. I pull off a piece of the house. I bang up my car, and the kids get to watch all of this. And but thank God for my husband, because he goes out and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna back your car out of the garage right now because you need this. Like, and but just displaying that, like, adults have really bad moments too. Adults make really big mistakes too. Adults have to, and I mean, no one's harder on me for my mistakes than I am.
Right.
But I see it in my oldest. Like, my kiddo is so hard on himself when he makes mistakes. And it's like, well, where did he get that from? It's like, oh, well, because when mom hits the house with her car, the first thing he says, I'm a fucking idiot. Like, what's wrong with me? And like, just being so hard on yourself. And I think we can show our kids a lot by the way we treat ourselves and talk to ourselves, and we forget that bit.
Now, the flip side of that is that's what you said that's what he took, probably most took away from it now. But when he's an adult and he's in his own marriage, what he's going to remember is my mom did something absolutely ridiculous and probably avoidable. And my dad
Would have been, yeah.
did not go out because your husband could have handled that very differently. How many people do we know that would have went out? What are you doing? If you should have got up early, like, insert a million ways he could have handled that. Instead, I can see his face too, taking a deep breath and saying, let me back your car out for you. Like, I can see it. It's great. And they will hold on to that. So, like, right now, that might be what they take
That's
away
one of
from
your
it.
2 out of 5.
But
There we
that's,
go.
yes.
Nailed it. Thank you, Mike.
That was
Keeping
Mike's.
us at 66%.
That was one of Mike's.
or
That was
whatever.
one of Mike's 2 and one of your 3. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Balance.
Balance.
So one of the things that I do with my kids is, if you have more than one kid, you hear "Mom," and when you hear that tone, you know what's coming.
Yeah. Someone did something.
And I've started, stop. Do you need me to get involved with whatever you're going to tell me? Do you need me to get involved, or is it something that you can figure out? Like, you 3 are going to be together for at least the next 9 years, so 10 years. Do you need me to help you figure this out? And if you do, that's fine. I will help you. But I need you to take a minute and let me know.
I do that as
9
well.
times out of 10, they don't come back. Or sometimes they'll come back and be like, well, yeah, I need you because this sibling did blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, I think that's something that you can probably figure out. If I need to get involved, you might not like the outcome. But I am happy to intervene right away before you talk about it. And again, I leave it up to them. You let me know. Most times they're like, sometimes I get some eye rolls. We'll figure it out. But most times they're like, actually, we might be able to figure out. We're good. And I think, Melinda, you said earlier about like letting them fail at the small things now. And it's like, somebody asked me the one time, like, why don't you help? Or sometimes I'll know one of them was in the wrong and I will like turn a little bit and kind of ignore it. And I need them to figure that out because I want them to be able to have those skills and figure it out while he took my quarter. And that's like the biggest deal right now. Like that's a big deal when you're 7. So I want you to figure that out now versus when you're in high school and somebody took your gym bag that has, your valuable stuff in it and your, sports equipment that you need for the game tomorrow. And now you don't know what to do, or, silly analogy, but there's a lot bigger problems. And I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be there every day. I'm not going to be able to fix everything for you. So I want you to learn those skills. And it's a little different when it's siblings, but still you're learning those skills to talk about it with peers now when it's a lot smaller of a problem. And there are times now, I've been doing that for so long with them, that sometimes somebody will go to come to me. And a lot of times it's my daughter will say to the boys, do you need mom to get involved before you even go to her? Do you really need her? Or she'll say sometimes, can I help you? So it's really cool to see, but again, and just not fixing everything for them. And that's hard. It's really hard as a mom. And especially if you know they're really upset about something, but it's something they can do on their own. It's really hard. But again, looking at that big picture and trying to teach them those skills now.
Yes, I also tell mine to solve it among yourselves. And when they figure out they can't get that usually the initial intention is to get the other one in trouble. When they figure out that they can't do that, then they're just like, it's not worth it, and they'll move on. So I try to say, if someone's hurt or in danger, like, you definitely need to come to me.
Someone's
Or
bleeding or
someone-
puking.
Yeah,
That's what I say in the
bleeding,
classroom.
losing a finger. But yeah, it's really never that. It's
Yeah.
always like, he's sitting too close. I'm not touching
Yeah.
touching him. I mean, those kind
He's
of things.
breathing on me.
Which my son is really, really good at pushing those buttons. But yeah, when they figure out they can't have the need met of like me yelling at the other one, they're just like,
I do
Moving
have,
on.
so I have very different personalities in the three. I have very different mixes. And I have one of them who is he walks the line. He is very black or white. There is no gray area. If you ask him to do something, he's going to do it. He's a mini version of my husband. Pretty, I hate to use this word, but pretty perfect as it goes. Like he's very, if you need something done, trust him with it. Absolutely. And then I have one who is the reason I drink. So they butt heads a lot, and it's really funny to watch sometimes. But I will ask the straight edge one. Sometimes he'll come to me, and I don't even get to say, "Do you need me?" Because he'll just be like, "Mom, he did this and this and this and this," and I'm like, "Oh," and it's usually not that big of a deal. He was sitting too close to me, and I told him not to, or he would, things that aren't a big deal. And I said, "Oh, why are you telling me this?" And he'll look at me and he's like, well, and now he started to get a little creative with his answers. But sometimes he's like, well, that's against a rule. And I'm like, it is. But why are you telling me? What is the outcome? What are you hoping from this? Are you hoping he gets in trouble? Well, no, I don't want him to get in trouble. Okay, then why are you telling me? So we've learned, so we're kind of trying to like navigate that as well. Like that is your personality to be very, very straight line, and that's fine. But you can't expect everybody to be like that all the time. So that's really hard because I do want him to, it's where's the balance there?
Yeah.
Because I do want him to have high expectations for others in his life, in his circle, especially his siblings, while also trying to navigate not everybody is like you, and we need to be accepting of that. So
Well, it's
tough.
that boundary piece. You want to be able to have. You don't want overly rigid boundaries. You don't want overly permeable boundaries. Like you need to have that context in which you're not over identifying with the outcome of another. And like in the example of your two sons, that is ripe for the dynamic in which child number one, the straight-laced, becomes then some sort of sense of responsible for child number two, or over-identifies his own worth with the outcomes of the other, versus saying like, no, you're your own human, you have your own responsibilities, and eventually you're going to color so far outside of the lines, as all of our, I like to think the second borns of us, but like you're going to color so far outside of the lines that you're going to have consequences, and very natural consequences for that to step in. And I also think that can be expanded out to us as parents and caretakers. So frequently when I have had my least proud moments as a mother are the same moments where I was very tied to an outcome for my child that I was struggling to achieve for them, or like for them. It's not always for them, right? But it was a great book that I read not that long ago, but about the difference between like gardeners and architects. And I think so often with our kiddos, we have this architect mentality. Like, I need to build X, Y, and Z. I need to give you these skills. I need to ensure that you are kind and that you are helpful and that you're good at baseball and that you do this, this, and that. And like, we have this vision for what our children will become. And so it's our job to like build that. And then when our kids, are for me, my hardest ones is like when my kid's the bully, when my kid does the mean thing or the hard thing or the hurtful thing. I just have no chill there. Like I have no tolerance for it. And I get really tight and rigid and start valuing putting my own worth as a parent in their outcomes versus like I'm a gardener. And I'm Linda, I know you're a big gardener. I don't know about others, but like you are too, aren't you?
Veggie garden.
You're a big gardener as well, but it's my job to create the context in which the garden can grow. And it's my job
Right.
to protect it from little bunnies and other creatures that might come in and detract from the garden. Or, like, if the soil's not great, it's my job to change the soil out or add the nutrients that they need to grow. But ultimately, whether you grow into a cucumber or a tomato, that's on your side of the line,
Right.
right? It's my job to control the environment the
Yeah.
best I can.
I've never heard that analogy before,
I
but I
love
love
it.
that. Like,
Very
I mean, just I think about it as a parent, but like as a teacher too. Like, I don't want to be up standing in the front of the classroom like teaching the kids. Like, I want to give them the tools to be able to like figure stuff out on their own instead of me just being like, oh, this is how you do it. Like, you figure it out. Like, and that's hard for kids because they want you to just give it to them. But yeah, I really like that analogy.
Well, and I think when you're, at least in my experience of being a sibling to a sibling that needed extra help sometimes to make good decisions, I would often find myself the most angry I was ever at with him is when I felt like he was like making me look bad, or that like he was reflecting on me. It was blowing back on me in a way that didn't land right. And I think as parents, we need to zoom out and look at that at times. And as siblings or, whatever it is, think about like, am I upset right now because what's happening is problematic? Or am I making their stuff my stuff in a way that I'm not carrying it very well? And it's difficult. But I call them mom interventions. And my only goal of a mom intervention is that everyone walks away dissatisfied. that is the goal of the mom intervention. And so, do you need a mom intervention right now? And my boys know they never need a mom intervention. They've learned enough to realize that, like, oh, are we fighting over this toy? Well, then the toy is going to go in the freezer where you can't reach it for a while. Or, oh, we can't decide on what to watch. Well, we've watched a lot, so let's just turn off the TV.
That's my favorite one.
And those are very frequently my mom interventions. And we were with a cousin this last week. Who is only, but not, he's in a multi-household home, and he came to me because my youngest was doing something, and I said, oh, do you need a mom intervention? And my oldest looks at me, he's like, no, the answer is no, you do not need a mom intervention, because he knows the whole goal of a mom intervention is that everyone walks away dissatisfied. The other question for the pod that we received today, and I want to thank my question providers because I know it's hard to be among the first, but luckily at PCS we have a ton of like just amazing staff, and so when I'm like, hey, I need questions, these are the two I got, and they did it pretty quickly. So the other question that we received here today is, how can I assist my child in navigating grief and loss when the unavoidable happens?
I'll start because I asked you for advice last week.
Yeah.
We lost our kitty cat.
Aw, buddy.
She was 14 and we knew it was coming, and it was just a rough thing. And I mean, I mentioned my mom passed away like 4 years ago, but my son was like, he was really too young then. He was only like 3, so I don't think he really understood. So I always approach like difficult things with my kids, particularly at younger ages with books. So with you, I think you recommended that it was like Badger's
Mr. Badger's
parting
parting
gifts, which is like the sweetest story. And so we read books like for tough stuff. I mean, and then we talk about like what happened in the book and how that sort of like ties into the death in the family or whatever you're grieving. And that's always just sort of a helpful way for us to sort of start a conversation about it, is to read about characters going through the same thing.
Yeah, we still navigating the loss of my grandfather last February. Still hard to talk about it. He was really like my dad. And my son's 5, so he definitely knows, he's not around. He can verbalize he has died, and actually cemetery's like across the street from our house.
Oh, wow.
So we can go and talk to him, and see him. My daughter is 9. I feel like a lot's sinking in for her, and I'm telling you, Kim, like, this is my least preferred topic in the whole world.
Sorry.
I hate it, but I have to, like, be present for her, and I
Yeah.
have to, like, give her something. So we talk a lot about being in the feelings, not having, like, I don't have anything to make it better. Like, I can't bring him back. But we do talk about the good. You know, for us, he was a super positive person. We have pictures, we have videos, we have mementos. Like, she's actually started a memory box. So she has, we have like his favorite hat, we have his glasses, some different things there, and pictures, lots and lots and lots of pictures. We're a picture taking family. So as annoying as it is sometimes, it's really nice to have to look. From there, it's spiraled off into, and I know this came up in the last podcast, like being aware of her own mortality, asking questions about what that's going to look like, you know, and you just can't answer. You can't answer all of those things. And then, you know, we also are a faith-based family, and, you know, we use our faith system to answer some of those questions, but they're still not concrete. So I do my best in just kind of sitting with her and saying, like, it sucks. I will never stop missing him every day. That's not going to change, but that will sit. And I don't know if you made the post or who does the Facebook page for PCS. Your grief will sit with your joy, like, forever. So it's okay. You know, it's okay to be like that. So we talk about that a lot. I do get the question sometimes for, like, how to talk about grief or death with our clients as well. So, like, people on the autism spectrum, or just, you know, kids who have other developmental delays. And there's a little bit of research out there about it, but that kind of says you are supposed to make it a little bit more concrete. You're not supposed to use abstract terms like move on to a better place or even pass away. So I've definitely talked with clients about it. And I currently have a client I do some private work with who it is his topic of fixation right now. So this is, like, literally surrounding me from all angles, but it's kind of forcing me to grow a little bit. But he also has questions like, will I die? His mom's like, I told him no. I just told him no. He's 17 on the spectrum. Yeah, so we're trying to get through that. He has asked about being buried. He notices, like, if there's a roadside memorial, like balloons or teddy bears, he's like, what's that for? You know, and that's really tough stuff. But I think to be honest for the developmental level is kind of where I'm at, giving information, but not too much information, not unnecessary information. But if you're talking about a neurotypical, you know, I'm big on it sucks, but we're in it, you know, we're in it together. And yeah, I know you've probably fielded similar questions
Oh, yeah.
from your own child.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of questions, and I think that was well, my father-in-law passed away first, so my father-in-law died in July, and then my brother died in September. And my kiddos with my father-in-law, that was the first time they realized, like, members of your family can die. I think we always had a theoretical
It was our
understanding
first
that, like,
loss like that too.
yeah, that, like, death happens. We had lost dogs
To other people.
Yes, but, like, people don't die, do they? And so I can remember during that season watching on, you know how your kids get in those movies and you watch the same movie, like, over and over and over. The iconic 90s film of Jack Frost. Where the kid's dad dies and comes back as a snowman. If you haven't watched it, man, you are in for a treat. But I remember my husband and I talking about it afterwards, because it displays, like, yes, no, dad will never come back as a snowman. Okay, so let's get a few things right about death and dying. But I think there's also a lot of different, like, every Disney movie the parents die in. Like, there's all these different low level exposures to like death and grief and loss. And I believe in that mentality of like making rain or like making hay while the sun is shining. Like work on some of these skills, have some of these conversations before you have an applied experience with it, versus waiting till you're in the throes of grief while you as a caretaker are also, because the grief that's going to impact our kids is probably grief that's going to impact us as well. And so I think the most extreme versions of grief, like I didn't take my kids to the hospital when we knew my brother was going to die, but
Right.
and we thought that was probably not, like, he didn't need to be present for it. But we talked to them about the services. We showed them that mommy's sad, and at times mommy is going to go take some time to herself to just kind of be sad, because also as a caretaker, it's really hard to be in your own feelings authentically when you have witnesses that you feel so responsible for. And so
Right.
that balance of being able to really feel what I need to feel while also demonstrating for them that grief and loss is a journey that sometimes feels really big, and then sometimes it fits in your lap and you never really know how that day is going to show up or come. So I think having those conversations, watch Jack Frost with your kids. That's my pro tip. And then talk about what that means to different kiddos and have those conversations in that theoretical way, I think can be really useful or helpful as well.
I think rituals are really helpful. And as I was listening to your story, it reminded me when we lost my son and navigating losing a child along with my other two sons, also grieving that loss, and my husband too. So we chose to grieve as a family. And so we had a friend of mine made a blanket that one to bury our son with, and then one for us to keep the same size. And so he died shortly after birth. And so we have that little keepsake, a little memento box, like in our curio cabinet in the living room. It stays with us. But the other ritual we have is that every year on his birthday, we all go to the grave together, and we kind of reflect on what age he would have been and what things he would be doing and how he might be behaving with his other brothers, and my boys join in. Of course, they're young men now, but they join in on that too. And we laugh, we cry, we have flowers there, but we also lean on our faith as well, in helping us in that. And so, yeah, you live with the grief. It doesn't go away. You just learn how to incorporate it, weave it into your life. And, here we are 16 years later, navigating that.
I love that you mentioned that the grief, that the blanket is in the living room. That it's a part of the family without maybe being a focal point. You said it's in the cabinet, it's right up there, but and I think so often we seek to relegate grief to the space outside of the family
Hiding
time.
it, yeah.
Yeah, like shove it over there, and like grieve only on the birthday,
Right.
perhaps, or like grieve only over here but in private, or make it very distinct. We treat grief like it's this dirty thing that we can avoid if we don't talk about it. And I think having that balance between saying like, here, this is a part of our family's narrative, this is a part of our family story, and having that balance between it being the focal point or being completely unspoken of, and just saying like, it's just here, we just live with it. I think that's a cool.
And then even going back to like what you were saying about having that space for yourself to grieve, what I found helpful was leaning on a few people that were close to me outside of my immediate family, so that I could express myself. Like there were some some things I wouldn't express to my children because they were 4 and 8 at the time that we lost our son. And just having those healthy boundaries there. Like I have my husband to lean on, I have friends that I can talk to, but not putting the full weight of it on my children was really helpful as well, so that they could come to me with their grief and they could express it openly and not worry about mommy and daddy and how they're handling it. So
One other thing I thought of going with the values consistent piece is just when my daughter says, like, I'm sad, I miss Pap, I say, like, let's do something that he would like to do. Like, let's go somewhere, or, I don't know, mow the grass, because that's what he loved to do. Let's do something he would like to do it's comforting. We have, the cardinal is
Yeah.
often a symbol of a loved one that's no longer here. So, her and my mom and I, we all have cardinal bracelets, and sometimes I rub it. Like it's not superstitious, but just makes you feel better in the moment.
We talk about the cardinal thing too, and we have lots of cardinals in our backyard. So,
Yep.
like, I don't know if the kids notice it. I'll be like, "Oh, it's Nana,"
Right. Right.
or it's just it's a fun, and we're not a very faith based family at all. But it is nice. It's like a comforting feeling to think like
Definitely.
maybe they're somewhere in the world coming around to look over us.
Yep.
So we have we have a new segment as well. Thank you all for all of your thoughts surrounding grief and loss and supporting our kiddos through it. I think that is something that we as parents are called to do, and we're very rarely, because grief and loss is usually unpredictable and unexpected and often tied. The family system is hurting in addition to everything else, and then sometimes very practical impacts shake out from that as well. So I think it's important to have these conversations, since inevitably our kiddos will need to navigate that at some point in time. We also, in addition to opening ourselves up for questions here on the pod, we do have a new segment here on the pod. I think it's best for us to always end with those experiences of hope and healing, but I also believe as we cultivate resiliency, I think humor is an amazing way to cultivate resiliency. I use humor all the time in my own life, hopefully not to the point of avoidance, but enough that, when it's raining, we might as well dance or laugh or do whatever, because it's not going to change the weather at all. And I use a lot of humor in the cultivation of my own resiliency with my kiddos. You had mentioned like that eye that you give them, and so I'll often do that where my kids are losing their minds, and I just like, really, we're gonna throw things at a wall because I gave you strawberry jam instead of blackberry jam. Is that what we're doing? And you see their like resolve, like, yeah, that's what we're doing. I was like, really, that's what we're doing. And then we all laugh, So I do think humor is important. And so Last Call is a nod to that, is a nod to the insanity of our culture. And the purpose of the Last Call segment is to discuss a cultural phenomenon that needs to go ahead and see itself out. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And we don't wish to have this exist anymore. And so today's Last Call topic is that of parental behavior at youth sports. And so according to national data, parent behavior at children's sporting events has become a topic of significant concern and scrutiny, which is true. I've noticed it at my own kiddos' sporting events. We also now have signs up at our local sports fields that say, like, act like a flippin' adult. It doesn't say that. It says, like, the refs are volunteers, the coaches are parents, the kids are kids. Like, calm down, y'all. But numerous studies and surveys indicate that a significant number of parents exhibit inappropriate behaviors at their children's sporting events, from excessive sideline coaching to berating officials and aggressive confrontations with other parents or opposing teams. And this behavior has a detrimental impact on the overall experience for both children and other spectators. The negative behavior not only undermines the spirit of fair play and sportsmanship, but also combines to increase stress and anxiety among young athletes, causing many to want to leave youth sports. That parents behaving badly are actually leading kids to say, like, no thanks, that's not for me. The data highlights the importance of fostering a supportive and positive environment at children's sporting events where parents play a crucial role in setting good examples and encouraging healthy competition. So what can we do to support parents in acting more like adults than our young child athletes?
Bring them ice cream.
We could bring them ice cream. Our coach had a brilliant idea when we had a kerfuffle. Melinda and our son they play on the same baseball team. And after a minor kerfuffle in which I believe some parents were behaving badly, our coach had the brilliant idea for an ice cream social following the next time we played that team. And I thought it was a beautiful way to say, hey, on the field we can be rivals, but when that shot clock plays down and the game is over. We're all people and humans, and let's sit down and have some ice cream together. So I thought that was a beautiful way to encourage healthy sportsmanship. But other thoughts, or any other thoughts about, golly, parents, can we do a little bit better in this one particular zone?
So
Yeah.
one of my kids plays soccer, and when we sign him up for a new season, we have to sign the parent code of conduct, which
Yeah.
has a lot of the same
Yep.
things that are on that sign. But the last thing that's on there is that you will remember that they are not handing out any college scholarships at any of the games. And I love that. You talked about humor. That's some humor there, but it's true. Your kid might be the best kid on the team, and he is not that this game is not going to get him any further than the least, I'm not going to say bad player or worst player. I'm going to say the
Skilled.
least advanced player.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not any further. So I really, really love that because that's, something funny to keep in mind. But yeah, so just keeping that in mind. The whole coaching from the sidelines thing, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the teachers. Kim, you said, I think this might have been before we started when we were just talking, but you said that you had talked to the coach and you said, I'm trusting you.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up to coach, so I'm trusting you.
It's a good thing I didn't sign up to coach baseball. I don't know it. I would I tried to teach my 5-year-old to catch a baseball. First throw, right in the face. Right in the face.
If you were the coach, I don't know that the second game would have ended with ice cream.
No.
So, but just trying to keep that in mind. Same thing, the coaches out there, they are volunteers, but they have to know at least a little bit of what they're doing. Something that my husband says to me all the time is, if you complain enough about it, you're going to take it over. So I don't ever complain about any of the coaching. Actually, I'm going to go on the other side for a second. I'm going to tell you something really good that the adults did. So our soccer team, it's great. We have a great group of kids, and they have an amazing coach, and they've had the same coach the past couple seasons. So they're growing together. It was his personal goal this year to make sure that every kid scored at least one goal.
Awesome.
Right? We didn't know that as parents. That was his own personal goal. His son's on the team, one of Christian's best friends. So they're all friends. And it's just a great atmosphere. We got towards the end of the season, we had a couple games left, and there was 2 kiddos that hadn't scored goals yet. Christian's one of them. So a little bit about him quick. He loves soccer, but he's so kind. He smiles the whole time on the field. And if somebody takes the ball from him, he's just kind of like, oh, you go ahead. He is not aggressive. So he struggles on offense there because he is just so kind. We're working on aggression on the field, but he's so kind. But anyway, so he was one kid who hadn't scored a goal. And I realized, maybe within a couple minutes, in this one game, what did they do? They're all of the kids were working so hard to get Christian to the net and pass him the ball because it was his turn. And they're 7. And that was huge. And he did end up scoring a goal that game. He scored a goal. Every parent on the sideline on our team we were screaming, we were hooting, we were hollering. And we did that for the 2 that were there. But the things that coach is instilling in our kids, I'm bawling. It was just this huge deal. The whole team just came together. But so if we can just have more of that, that will fade out. So
Additive instead of being.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a little, I think it may have been the same game, so you might not have been there, but it was the same thing. One of the little boys hadn't gotten a hit yet this season, and his mom was just like, can you guys cheer for him? Can you guys cheer for him? And we all did, and he got a hit, and she was crying, and it was it was so it was just a moment that you want to remember, And I agree, if you could do that and get rid of all the other stuff, then it also all goes back to modeling, we talked about earlier. if we model to our kids to do stuff like that and support and encourage each other rather than like make fun of each other. I mean, and the guy at that baseball team, at that baseball game, his kid was the only kid that the guy that, you know, was like aggressive and carrying on or whatever. His poor kid was the only kid that was crying at the end of that game. And how bad does that, like, I don't know. That's
Sit
just
with that.
like that, like
Yeah.
like your kid's the only kid that's upset and crying. And and I mean like crying, not like tears.
So
like,
then next year when it's time to sign up again and all these kids are like, yeah, we want to do it, he's going to, you know, that poor kid's going to
Yeah.
be thinking like, well, do I really want to do it if this is how every game's going to end?
Right.
Like, it's a lot of fun while I'm playing, but if I'm going to end every game by my dad screaming at somebody and I'm crying, like, do I even want to do this?
right.
And I'm not sure that my mentality is the best one or the healthiest one. Like it took that game for me to realize we actually were keeping score and there were winners and losers of these games. I didn't know. I thought we were just having fun. And because up until then we were having fun. And at least I know for my own kiddo, similar to like Silas is just he's got his confidence always lags. He needs a little bit of extra time to feel good about what he's doing and really throw himself into it. And if you have an adult that can't tolerate like
Failure.
the failure, like an adult that can't tolerate like a kid missing a hit, like how do we expect our kids to be able to miss the hit? And so my own son, you know, anxious parent, anxious child. My own son has that same like really high standard that he holds to himself. And so if he makes a mistake, he just doesn't want to do it at all. And I have no idea where he gets it. And so to not model for them, like, yeah, like sometimes you lose and then you give them a high five and you go about your day because that right there is a superpower. That is a superpower. And we're missing the opportunity to let our kids have a loss at a baseball game as one of the many ways where they can build in their own resiliency.
Yeah, baseball is interesting too because not to excuse, you know, failure. If we want to see the effort, and my husband and I coach various sports, our goal is growth and development.
Yeah.
You know, if you're better than you were at the beginning of the season, that's a win. For us, we don't always have a winning team or a dominant team. I'm a very competitive person, so as much as I would love that for myself, you know, it's just not always where the kids are at. But even with baseball, we say, guys, or softball, the best hitters in MLB hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, get a hit. You know, that's low. That's pretty low, but you're considered good if you have a 300 average. Puts it in a perspective where we watch. I'm like, oh, look, struck out. Like, they strike out multiple times a game. Like, it's how you learn, you know. That's a tough sport. We have codes of conduct as well. I don't feel like they're enforced very well. Like, if we do have a problematic parent, there isn't always a clear consequence, which that's what if I was in charge.
Our BCBA would like
I would be like, okay, you get a warning, and then after that, you're not allowed to be at the next game or
It's all
the
about-
next
I
practice.
feel like you could do a whole podcast on like accountability.
Yes, yes. And yes, if you want to help, we always welcome help, but we need the boundaries too. You know, it is hard to be objective with your kid. It is hard to be patient with your kid. But like my son wrestles, and wrestling's a brutal sport. It's tough mentally and physically. And it's so public and individual. It's like you and one other kid are going out there just trying to, you know, smash each other and get the win. And we, you know, I've seen a lot of parents. This was his first past season. One parent was out in the lobby in front of, you know, hundreds, you know, we have one parent, you suck, is what he said to his kid. And it's a little boy, you know, you look like an idiot out there. I'm like, oh my God, like it was really hard for me to stay regulated at that point.
That's when Mike's like grabbing my arm and pulling me back.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
I
I have
had-
something to say about that.
Keep walking. But man, my heart went out to that kid. It's a hard enough sport, but yeah, we see it across the board. My thing is, let's just give youth sports back to the kids. Let's give them
Yes.
back. Give it back to the kids. It has become, you know, you can't just play baseball from March to June, it has to be year round. You know, when I was a kid, we played sports in the season. And then we were kids, or we played a different sport in the other season.
Well, that
Now,
goes- sorry.
it has to be your life. It has to be hundreds and thousands of dollars spent. You know,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
do travel ball, yeah, if the kids love it, that's one thing. If you can afford it, that's one thing. But man, they're under a lot of pressure to make this their lives.
That goes back to what you were talking about with resiliency and like overscheduling and stuff. And it's hard not to overschedule because like my son was like, I want to do karate and piano, and I was like, well, and can I start gymnastics again? And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's like too much.
First of all, that's a mortgage. So no
well, that,
on all of that.
like that, and but like I can't clone myself and like get you to all of these things. So like let's try one thing and then move on. Like see if that's where you want to stay or not. Like it's hard to navigate that.
So I saw a quote and I was like, "Ooh, that's my daughter. We're using this." And we say it to her all the time. And it is, "You can do anything, but you may not do everything." And
I like that.
I wish I could take credit for it. I can't. I saw it somewhere and I was like, "Oh, that's it." Because she is one of those kids where a lot of things come natural to her. So she loves to bake. She loves to paint. So she does all of that a lot. And then she's in gymnastics. She took a break this year, but she's going back into ballet and tap next year. She has about 16 classes, dance classes that she wants to take. We're not letting her. But same thing. So we're like, yeah, we got to narrow that down a little bit. But
Yeah, like I want my kids like to be dirty and play out, not from the ball field.
Yeah.
You know, play in the dirt, go to the creek, have
Yep.
friends over, swim. You know, I want them to do things for fun. I think it just creates this unrealistic expectation, but a lot of parents look at it as a badge of honor. You know, my kid's on 2 travel teams and we do, you know, something during the week as we play football too. I'm like, wow, when did they get to just play? Like, when do they get downtime? We had a family member who her kid was in everything, and you know, they were going through some family dynamic stuff, and she's like, I just don't know why he's so anxious and stressed out. I'm like, really? Really? Like, this kid is in so many things and there's pressure to be the best, and again, not being in the system, it was easy for us to see. But yeah, if the answer to me, if a kid wants to do something, do they really love doing it? Because then it doesn't work. But when they stop loving it, then it's stress. And I don't think that's a fair burden for a child to bear. They can be stressed their whole adult life.
Yeah.
They don't need to be stressed as kids. You know, not if we can help it. Only the you stress, the good stress, you
Yeah.
know, the life stuff. But not, you know, am I not going to get a hit and then dad or mom will scream at me in the car on the way home or make me feel bad about it. You know, taking pride in the little things like, hey, they got that hit today. My son was on a good baseball team this year, and it took him a while to get the hang of hitting. And once he did, he took off. And one game he had like 3 hits, and they gave him the game ball. You know, that was his world made. That was awesome. So I mean, he wasn't the best player, but he felt big that day.
But I think that like those are the soft skills that our kids could learn
Right.
through doing athletics if we didn't once again make it so outcomes driven. Like again, if we focused on being gardeners
Sports
versus
it teaches
being architects.
It teaches so many things other than the hard skills of, you know, if you're in
Throwing a
baseball,
ball, catching the
throwing,
ball.
catching, hitting, you know, fielding.
Well, and
That's
like,
one thing, but the team
Yeah.
atmosphere, the working together, sometimes with people you don't love or like, you know, the encouragement when things don't look great. Those are the things that are really cool.
Well, and sorry, I'm really bad at interrupting people, so and I've done it to you
Fine.
twice now, and I apologize. It's just
You're
like
good.
something pops in my head, and I have to get it out right away.
Feel
But
that.
I mean, if you think about it, like I played sports as a kid. I don't use those hard skills anymore, like as an adult. But like the soft skills, like the being a good team player and, you know, encouraging each other and working together, and like those are the skills that I learned from playing team sports that I actually use as an adult. So
Right.
like nobody's going to offer probably my kids scholarships for their sports, but like that's not why. Like it's fun. It should be fun for them. Totally agree with you on that. And like they're learning other things, like how to react to situations for and like that's practice for adulthood. So,
I read a good article a couple years ago on it was like interview of parents. Why do you do the sports? You know, why are you in like higher level or intensive sports? And an answer a lot of parents will give is, well, we want them to get a college scholarship. And they actually did like a mock breakdown of like when you travel, you know, it's like going to different states, like hotels, tournament fees, equipment. I mean, baseball alone, you can easily purchase a bat for $500, special bats. If you can't hit, they're not going to help you. Like you got to be able to hit. You know, gloves can be hundreds of dollars as well. But you know, adding up all that stuff, and then looking at the cost of college, which is high, yes, but like you could have paid it. You could have paid for a lot
It's
of
true.
that college with all that money. If it brings you joy, fine, that's okay. But I don't always believe that it brings kids joy. You know, like that it's made out to.
Well, I think it brings joy when there's like this year we were lucky the baseball team that we were on, great team, great community, the coaches,
Yeah.
the kids, like
Same.
it brings about a different layer of benefit even beyond any hard skills they learn or any talent. And so I think that what you had said, and I think it'll be a good sort of place to land the plane here today, is in that idea of like, we've got to give sports back to kids. We have to stop making it about us. We have to stop making it about our own egos. And I know that we have like the criticism of the millennial generation, like not every kid gets a trophy. But like who gives a shit if your 7-year-old gets a trophy? Also, like why? That's not the reason kids are entitled. I'm sorry. Like there's a lot of other reasons. The single trophy at the end of I don't know. I don't think that's it. So I think that right now, giving the sports back to the kiddos, making it about their own development and their social skills and their distress tolerance. I mean, nothing can teach distress tolerance more than trying to hit a ball with a bat on a regular basis. Like that will certainly develop your skill set. So I think at this point in time, in terms of last call, and the thing that needs to see itself out are these parents that are way, way, way too over-identified with their children's sporting activities and losing sight of all of the other benefits that can come through participation. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me around this table in this space as we tackle part 2 of Kids in Crisis. I think we had some great conversations today surrounding grief, resiliency, education, and just our own mentality in supporting our kids in doing the really hard stuff. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you. We have a couple upcoming podcasts, one on the same topic, so that'll be part 3, and we'll wrap it up. And then moving on to a whole host of different topics, such as why are we so obsessed with murder shows, or why is romance so difficult in 2023, and what is getting in the way. So thank you all so much. Again, I'm Kim Ernest. This is the How to Be Happy Hour, and we are at the end. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
I literally never know.